I just want to give you a little bit of an introduction, who I am, what this thing is. I'm Felix Melpica, the Bishop of the Crosse Area Synod. It is a joy to be with you today, celebrating 150 years of faithful ministry here. And I come carrying this. This is called a crozier. It's a symbol of the office of bishop. The Crosse Area Synod has never had one before, so this is the first one. It was made by a man just down in Ferryville, actually. This piece here is local black walnut. These pieces here, this is the new logo for the La Crosse Area Synod, and it has a lot of meaning. It's been a symbol that bishops have carried with them for hundreds and hundreds of years because, the word bishop means overseer, right? And the word synod means those walking together. So quite literally, like a shepherd guiding the sheep, right? The one who oversees, the one who gives some guidance, gives some leadership, and protects. And sometimes when a sheep goes astray, like a pastor over here, you pull them back in line. Maybe a congregation too needs a little reminder. But this is a symbol, right, of what the bishop does. But the piece that I like even more than that is a reminder that every time you see me holding this is that I don't walk into the room or a community as Felix Melpica, but I walk in as someone who represents the church, the broader church, that you are a part of a church that's much bigger than the people inside this room, that through me and through the synod, you are connected to 73 other congregations who worship together this morning, that you are connected through me to our partners abroad who are the Evangelical Church of the Czech Brethren in Chechnya, the Czech Republic, and they even sent one of their young people to work at Sugar Creek this summer. That church over there, right, is very close to Ukraine, and they have been working hands-on, receiving refugees coming from Ukraine basically since day one. The story that they told me was that just in the weeks leading up to the war breaking out in Ukraine, the pastor started to get this feeling like something is brewing. We need to start taking some steps towards, being ready to receive people. So they gathered together as a whole church, and they made an official decision that they would open up their churches in order to receive these refugees, that they could be used for housing, that they could be used for schools. And the day that they made that decision official, the next day war broke out. And they were ready to be there with open arms to receive these people who had no home all of a sudden. These mainly women and children, right? Because the men were staying back to keep fighting. It was God's presence there, connected to us through those churches. And we've been supporting them through the work of Lutheran Disaster Response, through the work of Global Missions, and through the work of World Hunger, which we are all connected to. We're also connected to the Lutheran Church of Peru, which I just got back from 4 days ago. I was there for a week visiting with our siblings in Peru, and next year we're celebrating 20 years of being in relationship with the church in Peru. So I'm looking at getting together a group of people to go with me next year to go celebrate that, to go see and walk alongside the good people of Peru, to engage and ask the question of what does ministry together look like for the next 20 years. So if you're interested, I'm looking for people. If you're interested in taking that long trip to Peru, we're going to be sending out some information very soon, actually, to get people to send in their plea to come with us, because it'll probably be a smaller group, so we won't be able to take everyone, but a small group will come with us, representative, and go and celebrate and eat some good food and listen to some good music, and also see a little bit of pain, see a little bit of suffering that we are connected to, but also to see what God is up to in that place, because God is up to something, and I can tell you that for sure from experience from the last week. It also means, right, you have so many connections. Did you know that you're connected to 65 synods all across the country? Did you know that you're connected to a Lutheran World Federation that literally worships all around the world? That every time that you see this up front, I want it to be like a reminder that the church is so much bigger, than this one room, that you are not alone, that it includes, 30,000 youth all around the country that love this church and are connected. It includes 200 youth that got together last summer up in River Falls to do a youth gathering, and we had so much fun dancing and singing, but also talking about what it means to be Christian in the world, about what it means to lift up the most lowly. And also, one of the things that I love to do is as I go from church to church, I usually do a children's sermon, and I ask whatever kids are around to come and put their hands on the crozier with me. We say a little prayer for the synod, and I say, that way I can tell every church that I go to, I bring with me the fingerprints of every child of every church that I've been to. And that's true so far. Well, except for, those few kids who refuse to put their fingerprints on there. But I bring with me the fingerprints of the children across this synod to be here with you. And it is on behalf of this huge church that I say thank you. Thank you for your ministry. Thank you for 150 years or whatever part of those 150 years are yours. Thank you so much for making God's love a reality in this place. Thank you. Now, I see there's a few kids in here. Are there a few kids in here who are willing to come up and put your hands on the crozier with me and say a little prayer? I see a few. And even if you're young at heart, it doesn't have to be little kids. I see a few over there. Come on over. I see you. You see me. We made eye contact, so you can come. Come on. You see me. It's okay. Mom and Dad, you can come too if you feel brave to at least get a few people to come up and say a prayer with me. Yeah. Just put a hand on the crozier anywhere you want. No, you're not going to come? Oh, there we go. There we go. That's good. All right. Just a hand anywhere is good. And just repeat after me. Say, Dear God, thank you for this big church. Bless this church to be your hands and to be your feet in this world. Amen. Thank you so much for doing that. You can go back and sit down. Now, usually I do that, and the parents, the adults say, hey, what about me? What about my fingerprints? So at the end, I'll be greeting people on the way out. So you can come, you can shake my hand, or you can just put your hand on the crozier instead. Because I want your fingerprints, right, to come with me in this amazing ministry of the Crosse Area Synod. We just finalized a new mission statement this last year. My first year, I really spent doing a lot of listening, trying to figure out what is it that we want to do? What do we want to accomplish as Synod? And so that mission statement is that we, as the La Crosse area, are going to cultivate life-giving relationships rooted in God's love. We're going to cultivate life-giving relationships rooted in God's love. And that life-giving part is so important because we know that not all relationships are life-giving. And so how do we do that in the world? How do we cultivate a life-giving relationship rooted in God's love with one another, with the world all around us, with the communities that we live in, with creation outside of our doors? How do we do this work together? So now, let's sing Ale Ale one more time as I make my way up and we prepare to listen to the gospel.
Feel free to stand if you'd like. Ale, ale, ale. The gospel to us comes from Luke, the 16th chapter. There was this rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen, who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even dogs would come and lick his sores clean. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades, where he was being tormented He looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side, and he called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "O child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus, in like manner, evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us is a great chasm that has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." He said, "Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment." And Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them." And he said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent." And he said to him, "Oh, if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. Well, I got to say, my first thought when I read this was, really? For a celebration Sunday? This is our text? This feels a little bit too much like, it's got a hard edge to it. It hurts a little to hear this text. Because, last week's text, it was kind of difficult. You can maybe play with the word. You weren't quite sure what it meant. But this is pretty clear. It's very clear. Did you love that poor person on the corner? And if not, that's creating a separation between you and God, period. Ooh. And I know all of us have done it. I have done it. Well, I did it many times last week. When I saw people who were hungry and poor and in need, and for one reason or another, I just kept walking by. And I feasted. It was really good Peruvian food, too. But it did kind of feel bad when then I would go and visit with people and see what little they had. This is a tough one. And it was a tough one then, too, because in that age, in this time, there was this thought that if you had money, if you had power, then you were closer to God. And because you were closer to God, then you also took care of God's people. And so there would be benches along the front gates of the wealthy mansions. And it was expected that whenever these wealthy people would have large, lavish feasts, that they would have some leftovers to give to those poor beggars who were sitting on those steps. And you can still see some of those benches that are placed there by the gateways today if you go and visit these areas. And even if you go to Pompeii, right, you can see these benches are placed there right next to the gates, because there was an expectation that they would help these people. And we get this image of this very wealthy man who has sumptuous feasts daily. And so this rich person is not only neglecting their sibling, who they should be taking care of because they have so much that they have these lavish feasts. Not only do they not care for them on those special days, but apparently over and over and over again. Every day they see this person sick and poor and hungry. And the poor person isn't even asking for much. Did you catch that? They said, I would even just take the scraps. Just the scraps, the leftovers, the little crumbs that fall off the table. I'll take that. And not even that. They just sit there. Open sores, wounds, and this man doesn't take care of them. And it's interesting, though. Somebody does care for him. The dogs. The dogs care for him. The dogs come and lick his wounds, and, well, that's actually a good thing. right? Somehow this man is being taken care of. God is taking care of this man in some way through creation. And yet, it's interesting to think about these stories. What are they for? What are they about? What are they meant to teach us? Because this is a parable, right? It's meant to teach us about how to engage a relationship with God. And it says to us, if you want to develop a close relationship with God, you have to have eyes to see the poor. If you want to develop a close relationship with God, you have to take what abundance you have and share it with those who are in need. And when you don't, you create a chasm between yourself and God. You create a chasm between yourself and others. And, well, this is not a new thing being said, right? This has been said long ago, many, many times. This is the work of the prophets. In the time before Jesus, the work of the prophets was always to go and yell at the kings, to yell at the people who had too much money, too many goods, to yell at them up in their ivory towers and say, look, you are all having a great time and you're lavishing in this great food and big homes, but the people are suffering. And this is going to create a chasm between you and God. And all throughout the Old Testament, these are the types of things that lead into exiles. These stories of a time when you feel deeply disconnected from God and from one another. And so this is meant as a caution, as a warning to us. How do we remain close to God? How do we cultivate a life-giving relationship with God? It's by having eyes open and hearts open to see the suffering of our neighbor. And not just to see it, but to do something about it. That's what it means to be church. That's how we cultivate a life-giving relationship with creation all around us. We have been creating this chasm between us and creation, and now the earth is groaning. There are more disasters now than there used to be. People are underwater more than they used to be. The land is burning more than it used to be. The seas are dirty and the fish are full of plastic. We are creating this chasm that will only lead to death. And so what do we need to do? What is the work that Jesus Christ does in us in order to begin repairing these broken relationships? And God enters the world to lift our head up. That's what God does. That's what Jesus does. For Luther named sin as incurvatus in se, as being turned in on yourself, curved in on yourself, as staring at your belly button. That's what sin is. That you only ever see the world through the lens of yourself. You only ever see another person as, what do they have to offer me? Have you ever gone out to coffee with someone hoping that it was just going to be this encounter where you were going to learn more about each other, and then they ask something from you? Ugh. You know that feeling. See, I know some of you know that feeling. You know that feeling. You thought, I thought we were just going to have coffee and talk and connect, but no. They're asking for money. They're asking me to do something. They're asking for something because they're seeing me through the lens of themselves. They're not lifting up their head to see me through the lens of God's love. And that's what we did to creation. We saw creation as a thing for us to use, to benefit from. And now, that relationship has been broken. And, my home island, Puerto Rico, which was used to getting hurricanes, is now getting bigger, more threatening hurricanes more often. 5 years to the day almost from Maria basically demolishing the island. Another one, just as big, came and took out all the power. My family's okay, by the way. I have touched base with them. Everybody's got generators now, and my uncle's one of those crafty guys who took a motorcycle and he hooked it up to an alternator and he hooked it up to the house and he's running the power in the house with that motorcycle. They're creative. But that's our doing. People are suffering because of our broken relationships, and people in more disadvantaged countries suffer more because of what people in more developed countries have done. This huge chasm has been built by us, and we do it every day. And so Jesus Christ comes into the world and says, lift up your head. See the world, see its pain, see its suffering, and be moved. Be moved into action. Jesus Christ came into the world, and every single time that people turned around to see what he was doing, he was with those people. That's why this comes around, right? It keeps, the Pharisees keep on looking around and seeing, what is Jesus doing? Why does he eat with those people? Why is he always with the poor people, with the prostitutes, with the tax collectors? Why is he always eating with the wrong people? Because Jesus came so that we might see those people, that we might see their pain, that we might see their suffering, and then participate in God's work of redemption and reconciliation in this world, of making sure that every single person in this world can feel and experience God's great abundance. Because God made this amazing creation where there is enough food, where there is enough resources for each and every single person. It's us who have decided to divide all of that up so that only the few have access. And so in that work, God made a church. God made a church to awaken people so that they might see the world through that lens of God's love, not through the lens of themselves. And that's the work that this church has been doing for 150 years. For 150 years, this church has been committed to opening up their eyes and seeing the world through the lens of God's love instead of themselves. And that's the work that we need to continue for the next 150 years. This is the challenge I want to give you today. How can you open up your eyes and see the world a little differently each day? How can you lift up your head from yourself, from your belly button, and see the world, see suffering, see what's going on in the world through the lens of God's love? And then dare boldly to think that God created this amazing creation, that God gave so abundantly to all of us that we have something to share. And that might be money, it might be food, it might be your gifts and talents, it might be something very simple. Like maybe you're just the person who says hello and actually means it. Who says, hey, how you doing? And then you wait for a response instead of just walking by like we normally do. Because in those encounters, when we can actually see the other with love and mean it and engage, then Jesus Christ is present. And when Jesus is present, anything can happen. Healing can happen. Restoration can happen. There can be a greening of this distorted earth that we now have. When I was in Peru, I was in a little village that has been overrun by too much commerce, too many industries, and the river was just turned to sludge. And what used to be a beach is now just covered with litter and building materials. And I spoke with a woman who said, I remember when I was a girl, I used to fish in that river. We used to have parties on this beach, and now it's destroyed. But she doesn't let that get her down. She's doing the work of one little piece at a time. She took a 12 by 12 square and said, I can make this 12 by square beautiful again. And she tilled the earth. She brought in some water, she planted some plants, and that little 12 by 12 square turned green. She started putting up little signs and saying, you can do this too. That every new tree is going to filter the air for us. And guess what? The neighbor did the same thing. Made their own little 12 by 12 square, and it was green too. And then the neighbor said, hey, this is really great. We can do this one little square at a time. And I got to say, I looked with my little eyes and I saw, oh, this is never going to, how are you ever going to accomplish this? But through Christ, anything is possible. They believe in the abundance of the human heart. They believe in the abundance of God's gracious giving. And bit by bit, this little town is turning green again. And I believe that one day I'll be able to go down there. Perhaps maybe not me. Maybe my kids will go down and swim in that beach. Beautiful and clean and restored once more. And we can do that here too. We can do that work right here and right now, with open hearts and open eyes, to see where the suffering is, to see where the pain is, and then to be moved by God's love to do something about it. And God will be alive in the world. In that moment, when you dare to look up and not think about yourself, but you look through the lens of God's love, Jesus will show up. And when God shows up, anything can happen. Amen. Now, please rise as you are able as we sing our hymn of the day, Christ Be Our Light.
For light we wait in darkness, longing for truth, we turn to you.
Make us your